My name is Justin Marple. I'm from Team Bloodsport, and this is the RoboCast.
Hello everyone, my name is SamElliott64 and welcome back to the RoboCast with myself, Steve the AmericanKilljoy, and DavidofSmeg, who is once again kindly filling in for Jevon, who is somewhere on his travels. I don't know where exactly.
He's on an island somewhere, but not like the main island.
On one of the small ones. And as you said in the intro, we are joined this week by Bloodsport captain Justin Marple. Justin, hello my friend, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. It is honestly a real joy. We have got a lot of questions to get to you in a bit. But before that, we must, as always, inform you that this week's podcast is once again sponsored by Robots Ruin My Life. There is a link in the description. If you use the code RoboCast at checkout, you get 25% off your order. So go and do it. Use our code. Save some money.
Mm-hmm.
And support.
It's not going to be there forever.
It's not. We've got a deadline. I won't say what it is, but it's not too far away. And we'll let you know as and when the time is coming to stop using our code. But in the meantime, keep doing it.
Yes.
Justin, how would you assess your season so far? If you had to give it a grade, what would you give it?
I would give it a B. A solid B so far. We definitely came in with a new robot design. We're definitely a team. So the team where the official name of the team is Boston Stuff Robotics, and we're always a team that wants to keep iterating and improving year from year. So we had Bloodsport 1, the Circle Sport, and then we kind of migrated to the new version of Bloodsport that people are familiar with, and now we've kind of transitioned to this brand new, almost Icewave-esque design. And there's always new challenges and difficulties and things that go wrong with the new design. And of course, the first match didn't go very well. We kind of discovered a very major flaw in the design. And
oh yeah,
I mean, you say match. it was one hit. It was a spectacular hit.
It was incredible.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, seeing Bloodsport just kind of fail in such a way. I mean, was it the self-riser pole just sheared itself, not even getting touched by Copperhead, and then the entire head assembly just failing? What was the cause of the failure? It was just the material wasn't correct.
Yeah, so on the self-riding pole, that was completely my fault. Because that pole was meant just to be a test to test the geometry, because it's very tricky to get the exact pole geometry right. So we tend to weld it, cut it off, weld it. And during that process, we just tack it on 4 points. Which from a welding perspective isn't a structural weld. It's just enough just to flip the robot over and test it.
It's ablative, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So I had completely forgotten that we had only tacked the self-running pole. So sure enough, first hit, it snaps right off. There's just no real weld on there. And then, of course, you had the electrical box thing on the back side of the head, which is new to this season. And that was made from nylon, a 3D printed nylon. And unfortunately, that ended up being a bit too brittle for our purposes, and first of all shattered in the first impact, and then when it flipped over, it completely shattered into a million more pieces and then caught on fire. Yeah, so we kind of discovered that top nylon structure was not going to fly for the rest of the season.
No, it was quite the spectacular, as I said, failure of the robot in general. I mean, no disgrace losing to Copperhead. They've been in great form this season, but probably not the way you would have wanted to start. No. And then, I mean, if we go to your second fight against Gigabyte, again, it's not really a design that suits your robot. Historically, full body spinners, tend to do quite well against your standard horizontal. Obviously, I say standard horizontal, like your tombstones and your rotators and things like that. But how did you feel about going into this one? Was this a kind of a must not lose situation, or at least, if you're going to lose very well?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely didn't want to have a repeat of a one-hit wonder. That's a very easy way to not get invited back onto the show. For never mind going to the playoffs and all that. You're just flipping over and dying once. It's not a good TV show. But yeah, Gigabyte's a really difficult robot for us because there's not really much we can do to it. The shell is just hardened steel, so we hit the shell and nothing happens, and we just kind of have to hope either we can have more control, we control the match much better than they do, or hope they just kind of die at some point. So at the beginning of that match, I remember I think Kenny was like, "Oh, what's Justin doing? Like, why is he spinning up?" And the reason is because we were trying to control the match, like let them pinball around the arena, something of that sort. The wedge ended up not being the right geometry, and we kind of learned a few things. We aren't so good. We don't design wedges too often, of course.
No.
But, we unfortunately didn't quite work out. But once we got the weapon going, it stumbled into place, and we got that win.
Absolutely, I think it was. I think I say a bit of a surprise considering just the by nature of the two robots, but I think a well-earned win in the end against Gigabyte. So let's move on to some listener questions. We're going to start off with user ShadowRush2112 on Twitter and Aiden Muted on Discord, and both kind of ask a similar question in what was the initial inspiration for the theming of Bloodsport?
Theming? That's a good question. There's not really an explicit inspiration. I think it kind of came from the name. We when I was applying during season 4, I've mentioned this story in the past, but the way the name came to be was from actually a Taylor Swift song, because Jack Barker of Endgame is a big Taylor Swift fan.
My wife will love that.
So I was looking through just Taylor Swift songs, and sure enough, one was I think Bad Blood or something.
Right.
But Jack had already had a bot named Bad Blood, so I was like, somehow I got to Bloodsport. I don't know. I never watched the movies or anything like that. It just kind of came to me at some point and applied with it, and just kind of ran with it since. And the theming kind of seemed to make sense, like Bloodsport. Okay, it's gonna be bloody. It's kind of a sporty sort of thing, so let's just splatter blood everywhere. I don't know.
Amazing. That's so good.
I'm sure Taylor would be proud.
I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would. Steve, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. The next question is from Living Murphy's Law on YouTube. What's your favorite weapon bar that you brought for this season?
That's another good question. Let me think. I know Nick probably has his favorite bar. He's the weapon designer for Bloodsport. But my personal one is always the long bar, the kind of the classic, the one we've been running every single season. Because it seems to just work. Like, I don't know what it is about that bar, but it has like a really high wins percentage, and it doesn't seem to fail us very often. So I always it's like comforting going into a match with the long bar. So I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I know what's going to happen. There's no weird anything going on. It's going to hit. It's going to hit hard. It's going to cut through things well, and so that's going to be my vote.
Good choice.
Feel like if you were ever to get a hex bug, that would be the one to use, right?
Or have interchangeable the discs,
right? That'd have been cool.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just?
Right, I'll take the next question. So Ray McKean asks, this year the drive looks to be a little bit more controllable. So what changes have you done to achieve this?
That's a funny question, because I would actually say the opposite. The drive is not very. It's a really poor drive, actually. And I had a really hard time controlling it this year. And the reason for that is kind of multifaceted, but fundamentally, it's kind of, I guess you guys are all Formula One fans. The drive is very oversteery, so it tends to like to kick around really quick, unexpectedly, and it's really hard to control that. Versus last year or in previous versions of the design, the center of gravity was better centered around the wheels. I guess it's kind of hard to see in this picture here, but the weapon shaft is actually moved like 2 inches farther forward. That was kind of an experiment we were making in this version of the robot, and that definitely, the back end just like to kick around all sorts of weird ways and unexpected ways. So you'll kind of see in the matches, I'll just kind of suddenly just like rotate in place very quickly, and most of the time it's not intentional. I'm like fighting that urge. And the other part of this is new wheels with these split wheel designs, and we found. So I can go into that a little bit later, but we found the grip was actually not as good as we were hoping. And we had to run harder compounds than we have in the past. So it ended up being, there's like less friction on the ground, and the drive is not as well centered as it was in the past. So unfortunately, I wouldn't agree that.
That's still fair. That's still fair. I do love the new like drive setup, at least with how like the chains were between the wheels. That was a cool design setup.
Just as a protection point of view as well, it's just really clever. Like, the chain's not the most exposed bit. It can kind of hide it between the two wheels. The wheels are going to fail first, which is, again, quite a useful feature to have.
Yeah, as a kind of interesting tidbit, we used to spend about $500 a year on chains alone. they would break. They would dent and break every single match. But with the way they were positioned within the robot. So this was it protects the chain a lot. We didn't have to replace a single chain, maybe one chain the whole season or something like that.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
See, cost saving measures, you'd love to see it. You're like, frugal, the frugal Bloodsport team. Who would have thought?
Not quite.
Okay, so kind of the most obvious and notable thing about Bloodsport this year is the relocation of everything to the big head on top. So I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm really sorry. So Aldrin Miles Partosa on YouTube and Ivan Yang both asked, how would you protect yourself against the growing number of overhead attack bots, and what are the pros and cons of doing what you've done and moving all the weapon motors to where it is now as to conceal in the body where it was before?
Yeah, so I guess to go into why we actually moved the weapon motors above the bar, there's a couple of reasons. One is it's much easier to design the weapon system when you don't have these like heinous constraints of trying to keep everything below like 3 inches. In the past, we had like all these tiny little motors that were underneath the weapon, and it was just so hard to work on. All the wires were squished into the chassis, and it was just kind of unmaintainable in a lot of ways. It took us, if we had to take off the top plates, it'd take us like 2 hours to put the top plates back on because we had to mush all the wires in the right spot. And we also wanted to grow the weapon. Like we wanted more weapon power going forward because we could always, our spin up times like 7-8 seconds depending on the bar, and we really prefer that to be close to 4 to 5 seconds. And it's just impossible to do that putting the weapons, under the chassis. There's also other benefits, like we can put a clutch now in line. So before we had motors, the bearings would shatter like almost every match. So you wouldn't be able to tell, but it was either the bearings go bad or like one goes, one shatters, and it's just kind of riding there, not really producing torque. So putting a clutch in line lets us remove all the shock loads from the motor system. And there's also this other effect of if you take the weapon motors away, you can shrink the whole chassis by like about 2 inches or so, which then means we can have shorter bars and stronger bars to hopefully resist more bars shattering in the future fights. But of course, there is the key. So there's a lot of those advantages which are great, and then the key disadvantage is now it's exposed. And we kind of made this decision where we went through all the bots. And we're like, okay, how many bots does this actually affect? Does this make it worse, like work less competitive against those bots? And it's about 10% of the field. So 90% of fights will have a better robot in theory. 10% will have to struggle a bit harder than we did before. But we felt like we had like paths to protecting the head in various ways. So it's a give and take. I think the pros outweigh the cons. I forget if that actually answered the question, but
I think that's pretty good because as you say, ultimately every decision you make in any BattleBot or any combat robot anyway is kind of like it's a compromise. You can't have it all. You can't have all things to all people. At some point you have to decide. Okay, I'm doing this for this reason. I'm going to suffer out here, but I'm going to gain it back somewhere else.
Exactly.
All right, so what would we do here? So this is Hoppin on Discord. Is there any part of Bloodsport that goes underappreciated, design-wise, machining-wise? Like this, is there something that you think is rather cool, just doesn't get covered by you or the show enough?
That's a good question.
We know how to source them.
Let me think. I designed the build chassis that kind of pulls everything together, and I have a soft spot for that, of course. That takes hundreds of hours of design. It's when it comes from the machine shop, it's this beautiful piece of art, and then we have to go destroy it. But
of course, yeah. Hence is the way what you do.
The fun of sport, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't get covered on the show too much, but it's kind of a nitty-gritty detail. Like not many people care about the machining of the build chassis. I think anything else. Something new that we did this year actually with the chassis is we put everything to like 3D printed TPU mounts for all the electronics. So if you actually open up the top plates, there's all this like nice red TPU like holding everything together right into place. And
nice.
we kind of tune like the infill of the TPU to like give a certain amount of like shock loading, like shock loading absorption ability. So this year we actually didn't use many drive, anything that was in the drive don't think we lost a single ESC because we had a full inch or 25 millimeters around all the electronics, and they'll just kind of bounce around a little bit. And it's kind of that to me seemed like a really good improvement, at least on our end. And it also helps with the wire management as well, because you can 3D print this TPU, like all the wires kind of fit inside the TPU, and when you put the top lid down, you don't have to like play this game of like poking all the wires into the right spot. It's just
Right.
you put the top lids down, you're good.
Everything has its own home, sort of thing.
What was that?
Everything sort of has its own home, if you like.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Because we know how tricky wiring can be after you get these robots together. Like you do all the CAD design, and then you're like,
just smush
shit.
it in. Just smush it in.
I mean, that's the Beal approach, right? Just sort of shove it in and hope for the best, right?
Yeah. The forbidden spaghetti.
Yeah.
We try to avoid to do that. We've definitely done it.
Oh dear. All right. So our next question is from Team Tiny Hands on YouTube, which I love the name on that one. But what was the material in the head made of after the Copperhead fight? Because we know it shattered with like the 3D printing on that. And what sort of extra armor did you include for like the Bloodsport fight as well?
Roto.
Double end. Oh, Rotator. You are Bloodsport.
Not fighting themselves.
You're not fighting yourselves.
I mean, you technically are
Hopefully
throughout
not.
the event, but not in the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the rotator fight, we actually put a AR kind of bent AR plate that sat in the front. So you see where the eyes are so right behind that, there's we had a big thick, it was like 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch piece of AR that fit right around that. So if, in theory, if rotator were to run upside down or to hit us, we had some like potential to survive a hit from them. We weren't really sure how much I'd actually do, but figure it's better than nothing. So so we had that. And in terms of the head, we were using nylon, 3D printed nylon, and we actually went to our sponsor Protolabs, and basically got them to make an aluminum version of that same part within like 48 hours. So between the Copperhead fight and the Gigabyte fight, they were actually able to machine, ship, and we were able to assemble a machine part on site and have it ready for the fight, which is completely ludicrous to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even tell you how clutch having a sponsor like that is, and in times like that. So, so that's ultimately was our solution. We moved everything to aluminum. It was a little bit heavier, but we actually came in underweight a little bit, so we actually did have an extra pound or two to play with. So it all worked out.
That's amazing.
All good on that. I mean, I remember from recording, like this was like the Copperhead fight was like the last one of that day's worth of recording, and then I think fortunately you had like that day off to get things sorted out before going back into fight night again. So it played into your hands in a way on that one.
Yeah, it was very fortunate how the schedule worked out for sure.
Yeah,
Good to know your fights ahead of time. too.
Yes.
Oh, I can't tell you how nice that was this year.
Every team we've interviewed this year said exactly the same thing.
You say that, but I mean, your lineup was pretty rough.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we could plan for it. Like, because in the past we never really played horizontals, then we had to face 2 horizontals this year. So, we had to prepare 2 wedges, and knowing that ahead of time, helps a ton. Because then we can have okay, Jordan, when you go over to the welding tent, have them make 2 of them, not just 1. So, that worked out.
Absolutely. BattleBots Papercraft on Discord says, what was the inspiration originally behind Bloodsport's design in 2019, and why did you go for the round shape for its first outing?
Good question. The hope there was that it would help the circular chassis would help itself right using the Gigabyte bolt, because when we had designed the initial Bloodsport, all the overhead spinners at that point had no ability to really self-right, at least not really in a controlled manner. I think Tornado Mirror had a way of spinning really fast, and sometimes it would topple itself over, but we didn't really want to go that approach. So our thought was okay, if it flips over, if it's around, there's nothing to catch on the ground, so it could just kind of rotate and use the pole to kind of lever itself over. As it turns out, that didn't actually work. Fortunately, we never had to show that in a fight, but there wasn't enough torque, and the way the lever is, there was no chance for that to ever having work. But luckily with Bloodsport 2 and future versions, we were able to optimize it, with the new kind of curly shape and the way the chassis actually designed it. It makes it possible to actually self-right in that way.
Very good.
Very useful. Okay, Darren Gladstone on YouTube asks, "What did you learn?" Since you can kind of squint and say, if only this robot was blue or silver gray." What did you learn from watching Icewave fight, and have you anything planned in case somebody attempts to use a de-icer kind of tactic against you?
Ooh. We've certainly watched basically every overhead spinner match out there like a million times over. We've studied. So the biggest thing that we solved with Bloodsport 2, I think the 2020, 2021 version of Bloodsport, was the stability of these long bars. Traditionally it would flip over. And so we spent many months just like going through every single fight and like, okay, when you hit them in this way, kind of like did this whole shaky thing, like, and trying to like kind of understand the way they fought. Sort of de-icer, we've thought about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the solution
is a very rare tactic. I mean, it's only been used once, so it's you never know, but
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, that might be something I'll bring up later today.
See, influencing bot designs, I love it. We're an R&D team here now as well. I'm here for it. David.
Yep, I'll take the last one. So Michael Wise on Facebook asks, what is your favorite win with Bloodsport, and what was your favorite loss with Bloodsport as well?
I think my favorite win might be Blacksmith or Claw Viper. Those are really fun fights last year. I think anytime you face at least for us, we control or face a control bot, it's always just back and forth, trying to get away, spin up, attack, get away, and they're always right on you the whole time. So it's really exciting to drive. It's really exciting to watch. It's usually very, the Claw Viper cutting off their little claw.
That was one of the fights of the season last year. It was just so like, I can't remember which one.
Crazy fight.
It was when you you were over the wall, and then I think your pole touches the floor, and then you just happen to there's the door handles up or something, and like on another day it's not there, and you're over, but. Yeah, just happened on that one time. You just happened to fall back down. It was great.
Definitely had a heart attack in that moment. I think the best part about those wins is when you go over. So after the fight, normally it's like a judge's decision. You look over to the other person, and they're having just as much fun, as you were, because it was such a crazy fight. Mm-hmm. You can kind of like, even just waiting, you can kind of be excited and talking to them about what happened and like all the cool things that happened. Like it's a good feeling when both drivers come out of the fight, even if they lose or if I lose. It's like, oh yeah, that was an incredible fight. That makes that win.
Everybody's happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. In terms of losses, usually when you have a loss, something went terribly wrong, at least for us. Mm-hmm. I think it's the Scorpios fight back in the Bounty Hunters. That was a good loss. It was pretty close. I think we kind of wished the robot was in a better state than it was, but we fought as good as we could have.
It's a long season at that point. Once you get to those Cincinnati Slugfest episodes, it's you've been through a lot at that point.
Robots get tired after a while.
Yeah, those
people get tired,
and people get tired.
That was fight 9 or 10 for us that season. It was and so it was like almost a fight a day at that point. It was really brutal. Yeah.
It's kind of post Minotaur at that point as well. So it's already been through the ringer and everything else, and my goodness.
Yep.
The event really has evolved. Of sandwiches?
Yeah, we're not talking about sandwiches.
No. The event really has evolved in a way where it's, back in the day, it used to be a knockout tournament, even the early reboot knockout tournament. Now it's, it's a
marathon, not a sprint.
It's a full-blown condensed sports season, you know what I mean? Where you guys go for 2, maybe a little bit more weeks to get there a little earlier. Maybe stay a little later, to have fun in Vegas. Maybe if you hadn't already. But yeah, no, it's a lot's changed, since BattleBots is golden era, silver era. What would we call that from
Inception?
Last week, right?
Inception,
yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly a very difficult. It's like the funnest 2 weeks of the year, but it's also the most difficult. 2 weeks.
Yeah,
16 hours of work every single day, going nonstop, and every year we try to figure out ways to like make the whole process like nicer. It'd be nice to like take an afternoon off because the robot's ready, but it never seems to happen. So.
Yeah.
It'll happen one year, I believe. Although I suppose if that does happen, it probably means you've either been knocked out way too early or something else like that. That's the problem.
Just giving the controls to somebody else. Like, all right, that's it. Season's in the bin.
I've had enough.
So I'm gambling Bloodsport on a roulette table. It's fine.
Right. we have got 7 fights to talk about from
Yeah.
episode 11 of BattleBots. So let's crack on, shall we? Starting with Black Dragon and Bota.
Yeah.
The
Bota's
return-
Oh, yes.
The return
Yeah.
of the USS Beta, and it's. I'll give the Beta team credit and John credit. It looked better and performed slightly better than it did previously when fighting Lockjaw and Rebel. I think it's fought before with that kind of outer loop, if you like. I just don't think it works, and it's a shame because I know John is kind of. He's not anti-forks, but he's very reluctant to use forks and kind of join that ground game meta, which you've seen and kind of commented on so many times over the years. And he's kind of reluctant to do that, and I respect him for trying something new, but it just didn't work in this fight. It's a shame. Black Dragon was just too low and too quick.
Yeah. If you're in John's position, I'm going to put you on the spot, Sam and David. I guess maybe Justin too. Would you put forks on Beta? Would you commit the sin of putting forks on the robot? You know, I mean, none of his robots have had forks ever. Like it's not a thing he's done.
There comes a time when if you keep losing in the same way to the same type of weapon, you've got to adapt to.
And he has. You know, this is an adaptation.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement on like the 2020 setup, but it's still.
It's not quite there yet.
Not quite there. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't personally put forks on it. I'd kind of not forks, such in like the same sense like Endgame has, you know, the big long chonkers at the front that go halfway across the arena. I wouldn't do that. That's not really necessary for Beta. Something maybe like Shatter, like the kind of not the keep away sticks, the kind of shorter like standard forks that they've got, just like, you know, kind of poking out the front of the wedge might be useful. Again, I know he's reluctant to do that because, you know, why? I respect him for trying something different, but like there is now hard physical data to prove that it's just not working for him.
Yeah,
I think
there's a trend.
Yeah, it's tricky too because there's so much on Beta. I mean, really, the most protected part is when he has the wedge. Anything on top, not really well protected.
I think he'd have been better off going with the
Get
wedge. I really think he would, like, just go with the standard plow setup. I think he would have been better off.
A wedge maybe with some more protection up top, possibly, because I know there's a possibility to
that.
Yeah, we did see that. So that there is a. I mean, he could just use the wedge that he uses like here. I mean, possibly with a little bit more top protection. I don't know. So
Justin, what do you do? What's the answer?
Yeah, it's tough because Black Dragon is such a tough robot. It doesn't die ever.
We haven't talked a lot about Black Dragon. I mean, Black Dragon just ran through this fight.
Yeah, I mean, the thing could be on fire in 5 different ways, and it'll still push you around. Like it's definitely something I think where Beta needs to win the control game and be able to, because you're not going to be able to knock them out. So the concept is going to be like maybe hit their weapon and hopefully it disables it in some fashion. But I think in reality, you have to be able to control the fight to be able to win it. So I would definitely, if I was in John's position, I would definitely be thinking either a ground skipping wedge or some sort of fork wedgelet configuration of some sort.
We have seen like the kind of flat face approach work before. Like, we saw Rusty of all robots do it against Copperhead, and Copperhead just couldn't hit it for the longest time.
Lockjaw, another good example.
Yeah,
Lockjaw,
feed that back wedge into it.
And
when done right, it does work.
Yes,
there's just that kind of like lip at the bottom, which kind of like it's like an inverse wedge, and it's like please go under me. Please.
Yeah, Bronco kind of did
exactly.
that thing.
Yeah,
Bronco kind of did that thing where like if you have a really stout base plate and it can take hits, you can survive these hits from these verts. Like I get the basis of the strategy. It just, I mean, what do you got to make your base plate out of that it's going to survive hits
Granite.
like this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some kind of hard material.
Unobtainium, right?
Unobtainium, exactly.
Yeah.
We won't talk about Beta's final fight just yet because we'll have to discuss that a little bit later on.
We do have one more thing to bring up before the fight.
Okay.
How they had the little kilohertz toy to press
Yes!
the button was very nice.
Yes.
Very nice touch.
I love that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, just a sledgehammer approach on the Black Dragon team.
Do you think John maybe should have gone with the pill? Do you think he's a little bit too protective of the pill?
It's hard. I mean, they didn't really get a chance. I mean, to be fair, let's talk about the fact that Beta lost by getting turned over, and I think their hammer was already kind of sad after the first hit or two. Couldn't retract properly, and I think it wouldn't have ultimately mattered. But they could have done. But why risk it? I suppose they've got these flat hammers for a reason. Why not use them?
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like going into this fight with Black Dragon being so flat. I mean, with how well they did against Shatter, with so much flat to hit, I'm thinking that it was a possibility that it could have gone similarly just to avoid that spinner at the front. But that's so easy to say and hard to do.
Yeah, just to avoid the scary spinny thing, and everything's fine, right?
Yeah, sure.
Easy.
Yeah.
Who is Black Dragon's final fight? They currently sit at 2-1, wins over Monsoon and Beta, loss against Quantum.
Yeah, they're drumming it up. Here comes Riptide. Riptide 3-0 coming in, has destroyed everyone in their path on the way to this final fight. This is going to be either drag out fight between two really hard hitters, or it's going to be over quickly. It's I know they harp on this Black Dragon's not been knocked out in 24 fights.
I mean, if they survive it, they get the
if they survive it.
I believe they equal it with Bite Force. Yeah,
yeah. I don't think there's a harder fight to have to go through
this season.
To have to match the record that Bite Force set. So I mean,
it's a very impressive record nonetheless from Black Dragon, and fair play to them for getting as far as they have done. But it's a tall order the way that Riptide's been performing this year. It's terrifying.
They could do it, like Justin said earlier. The bot can drive around on fire. So. You never know. You literally never know. But I worry for them.
It's a tall order, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Fight 2 sees Cobalt and Overhaul. What a strange fight!
It was strange.
Like Cobalt just couldn't get a purchase on Overhaul for the longest time.
No.
Overhaul with those really long. Where have they been hiding?
Yeah.
Charles.
Overhaul deserves to be here. Big surprise, right?
Where are those long? Like I always feel like Overhaul's problem is they have to rely on robots to get super close to them for them to kind of use their weapon properly. Like Claw Viper's point of engagement is way ahead of the robot itself, right? Whereas Overhaul's is quite short and close to where the rest of Overhaul is. These long forks are brilliant, and they just did a great job of keeping Cobalt away. I mean,
long forks, barbs, and everything. It's perfect.
Charles drove brilliantly. Cobalt eventually the damage did start to pay off. I think one of the first few hits knocked out the arm, I think, on top.
Yes, that was done in after his first fight. Although Cobalt got very lucky because they parked themselves on the side.
Immediately right off the front of the fight. I mean, is it is this an instance where the robots didn't touch? Do you reset kind of thing? Like, was it a fight?
Gotta give props to Overhead or Overhaul to knock them off, because I think if I was in that position, I would have let that marinate for a little while and look the right kid and try to figure something out. But no, he just went screw it, match is continuing, let's keep going.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's as you say, it is very sporting of Charles. I wonder how many teams would actually think, especially if it was tournament time, 100% that's getting left right there.
Yeah, it's like a repeat of Blip and
Jackpot.
Yeah, it was Jackpot last year, wasn't it? I'm not touching that.
Yeah, but it's tough. I mean, at this point, Charles technically still fighting for a tournament spot. I mean, he's 1-1 coming into this fight. You beat Cobalt. I mean, you're probably making the bracket even at 2-2 with such a scalp. I'm leaving him on the wall. I mean, basically saying that, I'm not going to fight. No, that's just not.
It's a very bad win.
That's just not his way.
Losses and there are bad wins.
And I'm glad. I think we're all glad he did, because it ended up being a good knockout, drawn out fight that I just was very impressed with how durable Overhaul was. But then it's just Dave picking his spots. There's a lot to hit on Overhaul. So I mean, he's just trying to fight the gyro. I know is tricky, but as soon as he's flat and coming straight at you, it's very tough to beat a spinning disc of that caliber, honestly. And it's definitely a bot to fear this year. I think we've covered that enough. I
mean, they are my pick to win. So
yeah,
they are still your pick to win. Yeah. and this is the return of the kind of saw disc as well. First time this year.
I believe they call it Nasty.
Yeah, I mean that's a fitting name. It's short and sharp, right? Literally.
Yeah. There's not much more really to say. I'm impressed with the fact that Overhaul, did as well as it did. I thought this would be a much shorter fight. I was, kind of thinking, oh my god, we might have a massive surprise on our hands here. But as the fight just wore on, ground down and
the inevitability happened. Really.
Yeah.
I will say, Overhaul, right before that big final hit, it looks like a little clip from Cobalt stops the wheels, or maybe just Charles stops moving the wheels because he knows he's going to get a big hit. And I guess, just what's the point of spinning your wheels if I'm stuck on the forks? And then that big hit happens against the glass, and Overhaul is sad. Sadbot 2020 has returned. But hey,
what a throwback that is.
Yeah.
Oh dear me. So that leaves Cobalt at 2-1, Overhaul at 1-2. Who are their final fights, Steve? Who have they got?
So Cobalt's going up against big surprise of the year, Lucky. They've had a very good season. They're currently sitting at 2-0. They still have a fight before they have to face Cobalt. But they've had a really good run so far. Wins against a very scary Triton, and Kraken's still trying to find its way. But that'll be a good fight, I think, when that happens. That's a little ways out. That's probably, I think that's the last week of the season.
Yes, that's the last one. Yeah.
So we'll wait on that. That's a great fight.
It's a mouthwatering prospect, isn't it?
Yeah, a great thing happens in that fight. It's a very exciting fight. So look forward to it.
Okay, all right.
So Overhaul has Shrederator, bro. We'll see how that goes. Kind of a tough fight for both bots to kind of go against each other. At the end, I think Overhaul sitting at 1-2, and Shrederator still at 1-1, still having to fight Lucky. So it's depending on how that fate shakes out. If you have Shrederator coming in at 2-1, and Overhaul 1-2, but if both going in at 1-2, it's kind of a tricky decision on if the bot out of that fight wins, do they make the bracket?
They need a perfect performance, pretty much.
Yeah, you need
a win.
You need a highlightable performance.
Yeah,
but I mean, even still, it's probably a low seed for either bot. But we'll see. I mean, that's still, we got the future. It's way out there. So
yeah,
absolutely. Still a few weeks until that fight.
Fight
3. I'm so sad.
I don't understand the setup that
How so?
Switchback had going into this fight. It just feels like they're feeding this sort of like wedge into
beak.
Ominous.
It's the beak wedge.
Beak. Like, I feel Forks would have been better. It was strange on that setup, at least. But yeah, it's one of those fights where Ominous was winning until they weren't.
So I actually know what happened to Ominous this time, and
for real, right?
For real this time, because I had a quick chat with Tim on Friday. So I asked what happened. He was winning the fight until he wasn't. Basically, the hydraulic pump for the Switchback shifted, and the motor got stuck in the frame, so there's got no action with the Switchback, and that was that. And it's a shame because we were finally starting to see some Ominous goodness, because that's what we've been waiting for.
That's what Ominous has done
over here
on the other side of the ocean. We're waiting for that.
Could Switchback consider themselves lucky? I mean, Justin, kind of analyze the fight for us a little bit. I mean, what would you be happy if you're Switchback in this situation?
They had that front plow thing in front of the weapon, right? And that kind of got in the way a little bit. So that was a little strange to me. I haven't talked to the Switchback team to know exactly what their thought process was with something like that. So maybe there was something that I don't know. But
I know Greg's been doing fight recaps, so I don't know if he's done one for this one just yet. I mean, he's been uploading those, so maybe he'll cover it.
Cool. Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear that. But yeah, both these robots they're just beautiful robots. I'm jealous of because they're both very unique. They still have kind of the vertical spinner concept, so they could still both be fairly competitive. But they're just, I think I spent 30 minutes looking at Ominous at some point during filming, being something was things were happening and I had to break, and I was like, oh man, that's
it is a piece of work to look at in person, right? You just kind of look at it it's just fabulous, isn't it? It really is.
Small as well.
I know. Where's all the stuff? Where do you put it all? It's fabulous. It really, really is. And I feel like they've been unfortunate in the way that their season's sort of panned out. I mean, Claw Viper in their first fight was on a tear and, has been on a tear ever since. The second fight with Shredit Pro, I mean, that was unfortunate, the fact that the BattleBots felt the need to do what they did as well, but that's another...
So dirty.
Yeah, they got done so dirty. And then this fight, they're doing the thing and they're beating Switchback, and then how's your luck? When it's not in, it's not in.
Yep.
Yeah, one of them things, I guess. Steve.
Yeah.
Who's next for these two? That obviously Switchback.
The last fights each.
Yeah, Switchback's now 2-1. Ominous at 1-2.
So Switchback's, Switchback finishing their season. They'll finish their season the final week against Hijinks. It's an interesting fight. I'd like to see how that phases out. You feel like Switchback could get up underneath that frame and lift it up, but I mean, that's only if the blade isn't spinning. If the blade is spinning on Hijinks, this could be pretty scary. You're hoping that ring of armor around the outside on Switchback's stout enough to survive that. This is also, of course, if Hijinks spins up to full speed, and he has a chance to. So that'll be a good fight. And Hijinks currently sitting at 1-2. So and that's their both last fights of the seasons. Yep.
Kind of need a win to like land themselves a good spot. Like even Switchback needs a good win in a way for this. They need their landmark win.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ominous, as you say, currently sitting at 1-2, has to go up against Shatter. Both of these bots kind of fighting for their tournament lives. Say one of these bots gets a win. It's possible to make an argument to get in, probably right at the edge of the bracket. We're talking like 30s and below, possibly maybe right in the low 20s. I mean the high 20s. But if you have a really nice final fight, you never know. It's possible to squeak in. Both of these bots, their seasons have not gone to plan. So this will be a very important fight to get the bracket.
It's the Omni v Mechanisms in that final fight, which will be interesting to see.
Which
because Shatter's had go ahead.
I was gonna say, which translational movement is the best kind?
We get to have the Omni versus Omni fight. We need to have an Omni Rumble with Glitch as soon as they decide to, work.
We'll get to Glitch.
we'll get there in a minute.
Hey, but Shatter 0-3. I mean, the fact that I'm still even thinking of them as a possible sneak in for the bracket must mean that their fights this year have been, decent. I mean, the Horizon loss does not look good. I don't care how you slice it. But the losses against Huge and Beta don't look too bad, considering how those seasons have gone. So a good win against Ominous might make them in maybe over a couple of 2-2 teams who have not had great seasons.
Either team needs to win heavily in order to get in, I think, is the idea. They both need to kind of dominate the opponent, and if it's or have a an excellent 3-minute fight where there's bits hanging off both robots and limping around the arena afterwards.
It needs to be fight of the week.
Exactly. That's the long and the short of it. It really does.
That's the goal, right?
It surely is. Well, we mentioned Glitch. Oh dear.
The kids. Kyle, why?
The kids from Berkeley College. It's just not happening for them this year, is it? I have to say, I do wonder. I know they had some kind of exams going on, and there was a lot of team turnaround.
Wasn't there?
Yeah, they had a lot of team turnaround. I think they kind of mentioned it in the episode. Like, there's loads of them, which is great. But ultimately, every person on the team. I mean, Justin, you can kind of bring us in here a little bit, but like every person on the team has a job or some jobs. Having that kind of change around of personnel, is that difficult at all?
It definitely is. This is something that we've been trying to work on year after year, and we're still not very good at. It's like just knowledge sharing between all the team members. So even before the events, I'll be, maybe me, I'm the person who ends up assembling all the gearboxes when we're in the garage. But when we actually get there, there's, we're all running around, and maybe someone has to take a gearbox out. And I'm like, okay, what's the right torque for the screw? Like, how do I deal with this? And trying to figure out a process to knowledge share and spread things around, especially as people leave during the events. And it's definitely a challenge to figure out. And a lot of it just comes down to like valuing, like committing time. Like, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes today, even though it doesn't help me get to the test box. I'm going to spend 30 minutes today teaching everyone how to deal with the gearbox or how to disassemble the drive. And spending that 30 minutes now saves you 5 hours over the course of the whole event, because now everyone else can work on the robot. So I think they're a relatively new team, so I'm sure they're where we were 2 years ago, just trying to figure these systems and procedures out. And I'm sure 2 years from now they'll have it nailed down a bit better.
I mean, you gotta hope so, because I mean, this year's been a bit of a rude awakening, really. Which I don't really feel like. I mean, let's face it. Last year they were kicking ass and taking names, and I think maybe people underestimated them, but at the same time, like, they were beating seasoned competitors. Like, they were beating Hydras and Rotators and Uppercuts. You don't beat them by accident. You have to be doing something right, and then this year it just hasn't worked out. That initial kind of side-on impact from Triton kind of, I think it must have compressed a battery. I forgot to say, Will Bales was commentating on this.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, he was. He was boxside.
Good. Kind of got his practice in for remars.
Yeah, for sure.
Later.
Well, that was post remars, isn't it?
Was it? It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Maybe for the
Has
next.
it been that long?
Yeah, it has.
Bloody hell.
Timing's weird, with recording, especially after like the mid-season break we've had.
Absolutely. I'm all lost and flustered.
Darn basketball.
Anyway, the impact that hits Glitch, kind of, you see the magic smoke fly out. I think they did say it was battery smoke. I'm pretty sure it was.
It looks
It's dense
smoke.
white smoke, most likely batteries.
Mm-hmm. Which, you kind of think, okay, well, Glitch is hurting.
Yeah.
Triton, again, tries to kind of maneuver around it, does so fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Glitch does its drunken boxing, I'm just going to stumble backwards and you're going to hit me technique, and it works because Triton goes flying into the air.
It's that massive hit, yeah.
All those belts come flying out. You're like, oh, okay, the fight's not over yet. We saw what happened with Copperhead early this year. If something connects to that back end of Triton, it is history.
Mm-hmm.
However, Triton using its bar as like a
Bradley with the big cojones.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my whole weapon bar and just stick it right in the dishwasher, basically, right in the blender. And it's just
it was the first one where they're kind of pushing it with the bar. I love that. That was wonderful.
Just nudging it along, and then suddenly, and
then thinking, oh, hang on, if I stick the weapon in there, what will happen? Let's find out. And sure enough, Glitch turns over, and as we've seen a couple of times this season, when it's upside down, it doesn't really drive upside down. And Triton with a pretty famous win. I think, is that its first win in BattleBots?
It is their first win. It completely wrecks that bar. Like,
that bar. It was already bent, but after that final hit, it is worse.
It's like it's completely out of shape.
Yeah. I gotta say, go ahead.
I was gonna say to Justin, does Triton intimidate you with its weapon size? Like, do you feel a bit precious going in with like comparing?
Oh yeah, of course. Like, they actually, I don't know, but they must have the bigger bar, right? I actually don't know how long theirs are. Do you guys happen to know?
Big, very big.
Book it for next season. There you go. That's what we need to see now.
But there's a photo somewhere where we took when they had brought Deep Six instead of Triton, and you could put the Deep Six bar on Bloodsport, and you put the Bloodsport bar on Deep Six, and kind of.
That's silly.
That's so good. I love it.
Oh, brilliant.
Where does Glitch go from here? Because they're now in the same hole that Shatterfied itself in 0-3.
Yeah.
It's not looking good for them, is it?
And
they're really in the bin. I mean, they really are. This is not.
Do you think they're done now? Do you think that's it?
I think so. I think even. I mean, I don't know. All of their losses have been pretty one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did quite some damage to Triton in this fight. I mean, that weapon's basically history. I mean, bring that to a hydraulic press somewhere that hopefully can flatten it. But I don't see where Glitch goes from here if they can't run upside down. There's just all three of their fights have ended in such I mean, technically this one ended with
able to run
electrical problems. Yes,
as well, that's the thing, and it's just not working.
No,
like, this is probably the fight.
Well, they didn't get to test it last year, did they? Is the issue?
No.
I suppose that could be another thing. They kind of underestimated the tolerances. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to ask Carl and the team again.
Yeah.
Who are these two's final fights? So Glitch, as I said, at 0-3, Triton out 1-2.
Yes. So Glitch's final fight, let's go with Glitch first. Glitch's final fight's against Valkyrie.
Mm-hmm.
So another horizontal, most destructive bot a couple years ago. I don't know where we go from here if Glitch can't stay upright. Or if Triton can poke a hole in that top armor and cause a battery to go poof. I would think that Valkyrie has an equal chance of doing the same thing.
It's sort of different geometries in a way.
Yeah, depending on with what disc Valkyrie decides to go with.
Yeah.
I mean, they have many options. But yeah, I mean, it's possible that Glitch could come out with an emphatic victory and shock the world, but it's not been as of late impressing me, which is a shame because this is a bot that went 7-0.
7-0. Yeah.
7-0, and now has lost their last 4 fights. Well, going back to last year.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they've still got a winning record overall, but it's
absolutely. But it's started. The scale is starting to tip back to equal as all things should be. There's your Thanos reference for the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a scary prospect, and Valkyrie, trying to crack into, maybe get into the bracket. It's that's a bot sitting currently at 1-2, right?
Yes.
1-1, 1-2.
1-2 after the appeal.
Yeah, 1-2 after the
course,
appeal. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it's still kind of fuzzy for me, even though I was there and saw it. So, and then Triton's final fight is up against Horizon. Not a great draw for two of these robots trying to squeak their way into the bracket. I mean, Horizon, big test platform for, whatever you want to call Horizon. It's like a mobile above a baby's crib. It's like it goes, but it's very scary. But yeah, that's a tough fight. But I think Triton's got the possibility of reaching in and hitting that base at the bottom. Much like unlike some other robots that just don't have that capability to get to Horizon's
center part.
Decently protected base because of how wide the weapon is. But that's a tough final fight for trying to make an impression on the selection committee.
Yeah.
But
not an easy one to call for either of those two. It's kind of a winner takes all. I feel that one might be, but we'll see in a couple of weeks how that one pans out. Next up, we have Gigabyte and Starchild. What a great fight! And what a great exhibition of the material of Tegris, right? Like this is, if you ever wondered why, Huge have kind of moved to this material, this is the fight you need to see. And I do feel really bad for Starchild.
Yeah,
it's not kind of the right robot for it to fight, is it?
No.
Again,
well, Starchild really has gotten scheduled by this season. They're fighting bots either their size or bots that it's just hard to fight. But the thing is, you think that back a couple years ago where Huge fought against Gigabyte and they spun their weapon down, and it was just the perfect way for it to hit from above and do serious damage. Problem is, Starchild's weapon has to come over first.
Yeah, it hits from a different way.
Yeah.
I think this is probably, if not Overhaul, this is probably their quote unquote kindest matchup because of just the nature of their opponents that they've got. But even then, it's kind of imagine giving a big wheeled, boy like Starchild, Gigabyte. Like, come on now, that's just rude. Give him a game. Let's see what they make of that. Let's see what they're going to make happen. This is by far
the
away
kids into the fire.
Yeah, literally. They did it with Ripperoni. Why can't they do it with Starchild as well?
This is true.
But if you ever want us to know what's in like those specimen pots, this is your fight to find out.
Yeah,
it really is. This is just so much.
There's a good chance it's something from this fight. Yeah,
yeah.
This is also by far and away Gigabyte's best fight of the season.
Oh, for sure.
So far, like fantastic. Well controlled throughout. Kind of kept it vaguely out of the walls, which is not easy to do, as we've seen. Took their time and just delivered so much damage to Starchild.
Yeah, using that kind of flat wing setup on the top, even though they throw one of them kind of early in this fight, and it's it's visible how they're off balance.
Yeah,
and that wing kind of starts to bend up a little bit more, and it starts to become more obvious that they're oscillating a a little bit.
But it's fine because after they both bend up and break off, then it's all balanced again, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, but very very impressive. Keep running the whole fight. Just basically pick your shots and just rip those wheels apart. It's nice to see them getting some good bites in. It's, for lack of a better term and the pun, it was nice to see them back to form.
Yeah, this is actually a match that we spent a bit of time watching as well, specifically because of the Tigris wheels, because it's kind of new. I think it's some sort of composite that's been coming onto the scene for a couple of years now, and it's always interesting to see when a horizontal fights it, because sometimes it works wonderfully and sometimes it doesn't, and trying to understand that equation a bit better is always interesting to us. So yeah, we definitely watch this fight pretty close.
I was going to say, the other half of your team last year had to deal with it with Retrograde, didn't they? They fought Huge.
Yep. Yep, that's true. They they had some experience. Unfortunately, I don't know if they got to use their weapon else too much to test it.
Oh no, because you didn't have the
Oh
splitter on that fight,
yeah,
did they?
No.
this lifter.
It's like-
Yeah.
Yeah, because they needed
Ah.
a weight to put the armor on, which ended up getting ripped off.
Hugely scary.
Yeah.
As we've seen this year.
As we, a lot more. Starchild now moves to 0-3. Again, we've kind
Safe
of
to
said,
say their season's over, even with a win, maybe in their last.
well, if they pull a madness out of the hat and
Yeah.
beat Huge, maybe they
how
sneak in.
how could you keep them out, right?
Well, yeah.
Maybe they sneak in. I don't know. Like there's always a chance, I guess, but like they'd have to do a number on Huge. Who is their final fight, by the way? Sorry, I'm kind of stolen.
It would
Steve's
be
thunder here.
that's okay. No, it's fine. It's coming anyway. The final fight. I mean, we've already dropped it. It's Huge. They get to fight another big boy. But this would be the true Cinderella story. If you beat a Huge that is just running through the field this year, a bot that we thought was going to we heard rumblings that it might retire. Yeah, it's very Tantrum in that respect, where Tantrum was going to retire. Like we talked to Aaron. Where like he was considering, not bringing Tantrum back after the season. I mean, the season that they won, that was going to be the last year for Tantrum. It's eerie how similar the stories have gone. So maybe Huge make a run, and maybe they have a banner, possibly, considering that this bot was going to be going out to pasture, and then Starchild, if they can get the scalp. Who knows? I wouldn't want to be a committee member trying to make that argument, but
it's going to be a tough go for them, certainly. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then Gigabyte has oh well, the shell in this shot might be their best chance against the endgame. Well, I mean, we talked earlier in the episode how well the USS Beta armor works against verts, but a vertical walled shell, I don't know. And endgame's just I mean, what do you do?
Look, I know
try
a
to
guy.
survive.
I know a guy who the Gigabyte team can ask if they're struggling as a horizontal to figure out a way to beat Endgame. This man right here, this man down here.
Yep.
Look, again, Gigabyte so far this season has struggled. I think it's fair to say. The first fight really struggled against free shipping, and they kind of panicked a little bit. I think in that fight they kind of seem to have settled down quite a lot more now. But they're going up against one of, if not the best robot in the field. It's a big ask. Big ask. But
I mean, they beat Endgame. I think they cracked the top 32. Yeah, I mean, you need it's a must win. Their playoffs start week 13. That's it.
I'm wondering whether they use the wedge attachment that they had at the as well
possibly
the kind of the spikes thing.
Yeah.
I like that. I think they should make that a permanent thing. I've said that before.
I mean, they used it in China before. Like, it's not like they just threw it on there last year because they thought, why not? It's a tried and tested thing, so it's worth a go.
Yeah,
roll the dice. They are in Vegas after all. Our penultimate fight, and our first two teams completing their schedules.
Speaking of rolling the dice,
he
is.
It's great to see Captain Shrederator back in action straight away after the absolute pasting they took from Riptide.
This fight got pushed back quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was, I believe this was the only fight that got delayed by a day after the incident. And we won't say anything else.
We don't want to upset the comments any more than we
Not again. We're not going back to that
again.
We've had a mid-season break, all right?
Yep. It really was a matchup that suits Captain Shrederator again. Jackpot have a fairly sturdy wedge. We've seen them beat people like Tombstone in the past, and it took a while for Jackpot to get going, and they didn't. I wouldn't say they laboured to a win, but they certainly took their time, and I suppose you got to credit Shrederator for that as well, to kind of stay out of danger. But ultimately, it was the wind was only blowing one way, and it blew the way of Jackpot, who have recovered from an 0-2 start back to 2-2.
They're back in winning form. I feel like the tail end of their schedule has been it's been
much more
helpful.
like it.
It's been helpful to kind of get back into form, where their last fight against Robot's been having trouble this year. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to catch a team on a downslope, to kind of pick yourselves back up. Sometimes you got to take advantage of those situations. And then Shrederator, coming off a evisceration in their last fight, for lack of a better term. I mean, there's very few teams that probably are more tired than they are coming into this fight with how heavy a rebuild they had to do. Yeah, you do have other bots and other shells, but I mean, there's limits to how much you can reuse after a fight like that.
Yeah, especially when the internals were kind of damaged.
Yeah, we had a fireworks show. But yeah, this was a really solid fight. I mean, there's lots of great hits, and Shrederator. It's the age-old shell problem where if you get them near a wall, you can't spin up. That's the real problem here, and Jackpot did a really good job keeping them in the corner, keeping that spinner down, and just gives them time to spin up. And from there, it's just getting your hits in and just wearing Shrederator down.
I'd love to know if this was
really
the
nice
fight
driving
that Jeff managed to work out, like the issues that the team were having with like the magnets in the weapon master, because I remember when we spoke to him last time, it was still not quite happy with how the spin up was on Jackpot. So this may have been the time when they were finally getting back on track with it. It felt like they were laboring a little bit in the first half, but later on, once the damage was starting to show on the shell, they were fully back on form.
Yeah. They just did a really good job of keeping them in that one corner.
Yes.
even when Shrederator would creep out, it's you get right back there.
Yep. You stay in your corner.
Yeah.
you like it.
Yep.
Yeah, just another thing to add. I mean, from it seemed fairly cut and dry, but as I did kind of take a while for Jackpot to kind of find their groove.
Yeah, this match was kind of a good juxtaposition, the right term, between this and the Riptide fight, because Jackpot and Riptide are not too indifferent in the way that the bots are designed and kind of function. And just seeing how just brutal Riptide was in like such a short period of time. I mean, they had like 6 hits in like 15 seconds or something, like just completely brutalized Captain Shredder like we've never. It's like unprecedented and
very impressive.
BattleBots, it's unbelievable. And then you see like Jackpot, which is I probably should consider more of a traditional vertical spinner, plate, sheet metal and things of that sort, and just seeing them side to side is like, wow, like Riptide is they're gonna wreck some bots in the future.
Yeah.
I'm glad to go against Riptide again.
Yeah, of course you fought Riptide before.
Yeah, in season 6.
Yeah, mad.
That was tough enough, and now they're
now it's even scarier. Yeah, okay, I'll put them on your try and not fight them list.
Yep.
Now this is where I normally ask future fights. These two have completed their schedule. They're both now finished. Jackpot at 2 and 2, Shrederator at 1 and 3. I'm going to ask for a one-word answer with David first. Jackpot, bracket, yes or no?
Yes, but just.
Okay. Steve?
Yes, I believe they've done enough to you also have to consider past success too. I feel like that helps, especially with teams that
past success, and they've had a hard lineup as well.
Yes,
yep.
I think they'll get in.
Okay. Well, Justin, what did you reckon?
Well, I know what the result is, so I think
so do I. But
all right. We'll a bit of creative interpretation, but we'll leave that one. Steve, Shrederator, yes or no?
I think this is the last fight, the last regular season fight we'll see Captain Shrederator fight. Maybe they get a Sin City Slugfest, but this is the last time I think we're going to see them in the main season.
Well, ever.
Ever. I think Nave was considering this being the last year for Shrederator. I don't know if that's been
they
public,
did mention it in commentary, didn't they? So
yeah,
they mentioned it a few times. Yeah,
it could be a huge situation where maybe he comes back one more year, and but I think the field has really advanced in quite a way that maybe Brian says, maybe I'll take a year, to kind of. I mean, this is one of the robots that's been there every year since it came back, since the ABC run. It's they haven't missed a beat.
4.
Them, Hypershock, Witch Doctor, and
Lockjaw, Whiplash, kind of.
Yeah, Whiplash technically.
Okay. Yeah. David, I'll ask you as well. Yes or no for Shrederator?
It's a no. Their only win was against Hijinks, and that wasn't the best win in the world. And they've been bitten on. They've been beaten into just non full destruction and just bullied in this fight. It's just not happening for them there. So it's a shame. After last year getting into the bracket, it's just not happening this time.
Yeah. I'm going to agree. I don't think Shrederator gets in, but fair enough. They got a win again. I think it's all you can really ask for. That they were a couple of seasons where they just didn't win for like 8 fights straight. I think it was. So the fact that they have got another win, still in 2023 is fantastic for them. But I think ultimately falling a little bit short. Now,
a lot of soul searching.
We've waited a long time. Our main event is, of course, Bloodsport versus Gold Carbide.
Yep.
Of course, I'm joking. It is Rotator.
That's the right one.
It's beautiful kind of wrapped armor setup, which we saw the great Lincoln Electric kind of bit as well, where they kind of machine off the kind of or cut off the top layer of the wedge and kind of grind it down. Brilliant stuff, and again, worth the weight in gold at BattleBots, as I'm sure a lot of teams can attest to. Talk us through the fight then, Justin. What's the state of play? What's going on?
Yeah, so we knew going to the fight that we've seen the Ice Wave fight. We knew the option to go upside down and try to go for a head. We weren't sure if they would try to pull something like that, like last second, like pretend to be facing on the ground and try to flip ourselves over. So we had the armor kind of trying to hold up the protect the head a little bit. We also knew maybe there's a good chance they could go just try a different strategy and go kind of like a Valkyrie route where they just take a beating for the entire match and try to get us to die or flip over or do something that we wouldn't want to be doing. So we of course had the wedge in the bottom, and we actually had, if you look closely, we actually had wedgelets kind of snuck in between the wedge itself. Now it's just kind of like to play like a strategic game. Like if they try to lead wedge first, we have an advantage and kind of try to play this game. Of course, it got ripped off right. They went weapon first and ripped them right off right at the beginning. So they didn't last very long, but that was there. And most of what we were just aiming for is exactly what ended up happening. We always aim, try to be unpredictable in the driving, try to aim for the edges of the wedge. We ended up clipping the wheel nub on that, and I don't know what that's actually was doing, but that little nub at the end we got clipped off, and the wedge kind of dislodged a little bit at that point. And once they're driving out a little slower and inconsistent, I think it made it a little bit easier for us to kind of maneuver to where we wanted to and kind of take the hits we wanted to take. I mean, it was just a case of, fortunately, our robot was able to take the hits they were able to dish out, and we were able to rip off enough pieces after a couple of hits on their robot, and that was the match.
I mean, you made it sound very simple, but there must have been a part of you going into this thinking, okay, Rotator has a setup for everyone and can do all sorts of trickery. They could run forks, they could run, obviously they ran the big wedge in the end, but it could have been any setup. It could have been like going into the fight, were you kind of thinking, okay, this is going to be a proper tough match, or did you kind of look at the Hydra fight at the start of the season and think there's a weakness to be gained here? There's obviously been issues for Rotator this year. It hasn't really been at its best. Were we kind of buying into that more, or the first?
Yeah, when we heard this schedule, we actually wrote this. We looked at the 4 boss. We wrote Rotator off as a loss. It was like, okay, we're losing Rotator. But as we kind of went through the season, we lost a Copperhead. We're like, we probably should have won that one, but it didn't work out the way we wanted to. And we left the Rotator. Like, okay, we actually really have to win this if we want to continue on to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, it kind of worked out that they were having they were. I think Victor at some point said he was solving problems he didn't want to be solving because there's are you guys familiar with Vesk at all?
Yes.
Oh, we have
vaguely.
Rory Mangles and his Vesks has been all over the podcast this year.
Rory was a legend this year for so many teams. It was. But anyway, so of course he was having Vesk issues. No one wants to be solving Vesk issues so he wasn't really paying attention. He probably wasn't spending the time that he needed to be strategizing. He was just trying to get the damn weapon to work,
Yeah.
So we kind of lucked out in that case, in that, robot wasn't quite 100%. Maybe he was getting there during our fight, but it wasn't the rotator you generally see in the previous set. So we lucked out a little bit, but I still think the fight was solid. We hit everything we needed to hit. Did the damage we needed to do, and I actually have the wedge here. So Victor gifted me with the wedge of Rotator.
No kidding. Oh yeah.
Look at that. That is class.
It's a lovely piece.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Some lovely gnarled bit of damage there.
By far my favorite.
That's got to make you proud that something you made did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary to think about.
I mean, it now puts you at 2-1. You know, you're kind of thinking, okay, feeling pretty good about your chances. I mean, obviously, no one's guaranteed a place, but you know, you had a spectacular loss, a very short loss, but a spectacular one nonetheless. A win against a robot, you know, in Gigabyte, which has got pedigree and, you know, is on paper probably not something you're meant to beat because of, as we mentioned earlier, the geometry of the two robots. And then Rotator always ends up losing to the eventual champion anyway.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to think, well, that's got to be a tick in our corner. Like, we feeling good at this point?
Yeah, I think we had a solid chance. You never know with 2-2. If we're to go 2-2, you know, if you go 3-1, you're good. But if you go 2-2, it's always kind of a question of where in the bracket you end up landing. So we knew like the next fight we just need to make sure it was a good fight. Like there's no one hit wonders or anything like that. It was just, as long as it's a solid fight, we had a really good chance of making the playoffs, and we can like work it from there. Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about Rotator. Obviously, as we said, it did seem like it was struggling throughout, and I do wonder if they still didn't quite have the ground. Like, I mean, the ground scraping wedge wasn't. It doesn't look like it was driving quite right from the get go. Yeah. Even in like the square. Was it? Again, we'll probably have to discuss that with Victor at some point as well. But it didn't seem happy. And this is not to take anything away from yourself, Justin. It didn't seem like it was a peak Rotator. Like we know how good he can be. He's just a demon on the sticks, and just it didn't look right. And you know, I'm sure you're not going to take it. You know, you absolutely say, okay, if he's not happy, then we'll take it. But it's unfortunate in that aspect, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely not the 100% Victor Rotator that we're used to. There's definitely some level of gremlins that they're working through, and some seasons are just like that. You know, they try to improve the robot, change a few things, and then something happens. It doesn't quite work.
New problems. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, you know, with our new version of Bloodsport 3, same thing. Fortunately, none of them are super, super critical, minus the whole head debacle.
Apart from the fire, it's fine.
Besides the fire, yeah, it was okay. But luckily, we were able to resolve that pretty quickly. So it wasn't like this ongoing desk issue that we had. It was just, we changed material. That's good now. We can focus on new things that going forward into the competition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There is a scary moment in this fight where you're up on the screws, and usually that would be a place where Victor would come over and just, you know, that's his party, man. Like, just get somebody stuck and just start wailing on them, or just, you know, or outside of there, like his backup, his stolen from Ray tactic of borrowed rather, just go backwards and then whip the weapon around. But yeah, I mean, after that first hit, I mean, he wasn't driving straight anyway. So even though you were stuck on the screws and just ready to just be hit, he just couldn't come over and deliver it. And then you guys just continued to grind away until that was it. And then you threw your face at him, you know, because
yeah, the face was unfortunate, but
it wasn't straight, was it? Like throughout the fight,
it's so funny. Just like launching the demon head from it's like, yeah, have that, have fun.
Yeah.
I have to say, you know, this isn't just because you're here. Like, I've noticed, like, consistently over the last couple of years, like, the driving of Bloodsport is, like, it doesn't look like an easy robot to control, and, like, you make it seem very effortless. Like, what's your secret?
Secret? I mean, I did high school robotics in high school, so I've had experience driving robots before. It's not like BattleBots was my first gig in that realm. But I think a lot of it is just practice. You know, I used to do a lot of beetle weights. Unfortunately, I don't go to beetle weight competitions too often anymore. But back when I was starting, I went to as many beetle weight competitions as I could just to get stick time. And a lot of it is, you know, you kind of get to feel the robot. So it's kind of funny. I appreciate the compliment, but a lot of the fights I go after the fight, I kind of have like a debrief with the team. I'm like, damn, my driving is like,
I'm the worst.
Yeah, we watch it back and like it looks fine. You know, like the robot wasn't quite doing what I wanted to do, but it was like good enough to where it was on TV. So every year I try to like improve things so it is more drivable and, you know, more predictable, and especially the horizontal. You can never know exactly how much. You have like kind of like a torque reaction to the drive, so it likes to drift in one direction, and especially the beginnings of the matches, it tends to be very difficult. So a lot of times I'll just go straight, at the beginning of the match.
It's kind of pull.
And it just like if I want to go right, I'll just go straight. No, swerve right. Or if we're going to spin the other way, I'll go swerve left or something. So it's kind of learning things like that as well. Like at the beginning of the match, it's going to go right. So
yeah.
It's kind of arc slightly to the left. Let's talk about future fights. Let's start with Rotator now at 1 and 2.
Yeah, now 1 and 2. Going into their final fight against Fusion. Both of these bots fighting for their tournament lives. I mean, Rotator. I think has a strong enough schedule that I even think at 1 and 3
Fusion does. I think Fusion does too. Well, I mean,
they've both got a good chance, and this is one where they can be happy they've got their 4th fight as well. Because the last couple of years, 3 fights and that's it.
Yeah,
or 2 fights even last year.
I think
so. If
you look at the schedule that Fusion's had, they had a win against Emulsify, which was an incredible fight. They had a loss against Witch Doctor, which was an incredible fight, and their other loss is against Huge, who has been tearing it all season. Rotator, obviously the losses to Bloodsport and Hydra, obviously a good win against Jackpot, who has now recovered as well. So it's kind of
it's thankfully recovered. If Jackpot didn't recover, I think there's an argument to be made about Rotator, possibly, which is the weirdest thing to even think about. Considering I don't think he's missed the bracket since
2016,
his second season.
2016, back when Witch Doctor sent it at the wall.
Yeah.
Bloodsport, however, your final fight, Justin. The big British Hammer beater. Initial thoughts, feelings? What was your kind of reaction when you sort of saw that list of 4 and you see beta right at the end?
Yeah, it's really tricky, because it has such a giant wedge. Yeah. And it's hard to know exactly how that wedge is going to interact. Because usually when you see a big thin wedge, you're like, okay, I can punch holes into it, I can catch it pretty easily. But when you actually look back at Beta's old fights, it tends to be very controlled. It's a very good, well-built wedge. So it's kind of hard to know exactly how it'll perform. And the other thing that kind of caught me off guard when I went up to John after seeing this is just how wide the robot is. Like our robot's actually very compact compared to many other robots. It's very small, but Beta's almost like twice the width of it, or of Bloodsport or something. Like it's very, very large.
Yeah, I mean, there's that lovely photo of Tantrum just fitting within Beta's armor from a few years back. It just shows how wide Beta is overall.
Yeah, so that just makes it more difficult for us to try to get it, because when you look at this photo here, you see all this goodness.
It's so tempting, right? It's like a candy shop, and you're like, what do I want? But then
I want that one.
You have to get through the locked door first. Yeah. It's so tricky.
Yeah, one hit through that would just it'd be done. But I also felt kind of bad, and when I was looking at it, I'm like, I never looked at Beta very closely until when we had to fight them, and I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful piece of engineering, fitting all this hydraulic or pneumatics.
No, don't make connections. Don't use your heart. Use your brain.
I think I would have cried if I I would have done it, but
the Wario meme was I've won, but at what cost? Literally, if Bloodsport cleaves through Beta, we won't find that out for another couple of weeks yet. But that brings us very nicely to the end. Justin, thank you so much for your time. What can you? I don't know. How do we end this?
Yeah. Where can we find you? What do you do?
Yeah.
Where can we do? Where can we get things that are Bloodsport related?
Oh yeah, we have a website, bloodsport.battlebots.com. Maybe it can be linked somewhere.
Yeah, I'll do the stuff.
Yeah, we have a shop with a bunch of stickers, poker chips.
You have a lot of bots and stuff.
Hey.
You have a lot of bots and stuff. That's yes. We also have a YouTube channel. Nick and many of the other Seth will go and post videos time to time explaining a lot of details of what the inner workings of Bloodsport. We're actually starting to blog on our website as well. I think the first one might be up already, talking about the chassis design.
Awesome.
And we have Facebook and Instagram, of course, as well. So you can check us out, send us an email, message, whatever. We'll be happy to chat with you guys.
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope at some point you'll come back and chat with us again.
Absolutely, it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next week for more BattleBots action. Only a few more episodes now till the bracket, which is all very exciting. We're getting to that squeaky bum time of the season. But in the meantime, I have been Samuel64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I've been DavidofSmeg.
I'm Justin.
Hey.
And, well, maybe we'll see each other next week, who knows, but at least we'll be here for more BattleBots action. We'll see you then.